Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? From the Catacombs, I open my bloodshot eyes and watch the shadows dance from the flickering torches hanging on the cold, dripping bricks. My legs and buttocks are numb, but I can't deny the annoying sensation coming from my right hallux. I see a pair of tiny red eyes looking up at me. My mind screams in silent terror as a piece of flesh is torn from just below my curved toenail. The rats are unrelenting in their quest for flesh. My long tenure in this malicious prison has eroded the cobblestone floor. Thick iron chains keep me anchored to the ground. And in this madness of delirium, not one soul can hear my screams. The moisture seeps into my skin, and words from my captors echo through my disillusioned conscience. You will beg for death in the end. For the past 2 years, my body has been rotting away, or at least, I think it's been that long. One tends to lose track of time when your freedom has been shackled. It's hard to discern reality from illusion. The mind creates walls to shield itself from unnecessary damage, but only after your psyche is shredded and hanging by a thread. Oh, the irony. I rub my lanky fingers down the ridges of my shirtless sternum until I reach the white, tattered rags tied around my bony hips. There, I find my salvation. A forgotten photograph the wretches missed during their extensive searches upon my arrival here. Seeing the brittle paper in the roaming light makes my lips curl upward. Ah, my beautiful Reina. Her exquisite cocoa eyes pierce my soul, and her soft red lips ignite a fire in my heart. Those tender sparks of love have kept my lungs expanding. I extend my trembling index finger and stroke her long black hair. Her skin, a sparkling diamond in the darkness. I remember the first time I laid eyes on my beautiful Reina. She sat beside me in English literature when I attended the University of Boston. I dropped my pencil, and she graciously dipped down to grab it for me. When our eyes met, I knew she was the one. The peace I felt told my soul there was no other woman for me. It was like coming home to a warm hearth. My universe exploded into a trillion shining stars, and the best part, she felt it too. Our wedding was filled with family, friends, and happiness. We said our personal vows and cried a river of tears. When it rained at the reception, we couldn't wait to dance in the deluge. As the cool droplets soaked our clothes and flowed down our bodies, we were reborn as one. Alas, The conflicts of a raging war in the Middle East pulled me away from Reyna when I was drafted by the military. We had our hopes set on having a baby, but those plans had to be postponed. Of course, Reyna supported me all the way, but I didn't want to leave her side. The training I had to endure was difficult, but I found solace in Reyna's love letters. I would receive one every week, and I, in turn, would send my love through the wire. We longed for the chaos to be over, so we could resume our lives. It was midwinter when the letters stopped through no fault of our own. I was placed on a secret mission with a group of 12 soldiers to infiltrate the enemy stronghold to seize top-secret files on a nuclear weapon. Everything was going smoothly until Captain Ziggy tripped an alarm on our way out of the complex. And needless to say, we were captured. I can imagine the pain and worry my dearest Reyna had to deal with, because I felt it too. How many oceans has she cried? Sergeant Radagon tortured us for days and wanted to know why we were there and who we were working for. I wouldn't say a word, not even when they threatened to cut my tongue out. Thank goodness it didn't come to that, but I fear my time is running out. One by one, the cries of my fellow comrades grew silent until I was the last man standing. A second pair of elongated teeth biting my peripheral nerve remind me of the horrific reality I find myself in. I shuffle my feet and watch the mangy rodents scatter. I hear the weary sound of boots stomping toward me and take a deep, shuddering breath. A robust man with great authority steps into my view, holding a brown bowl and a lit torch. It's Sergeant Radagon. My dinner has arrived. Hungry Godwin, you'll need your strength to endure the pain to come, because I'm not finished with you yet. My questions will be answered. With that, the sweaty man tosses the bowl at me. The smell of molded oatmeal tickles my nostrils and makes my nose hairs retreat in defeat. My skin crawls like 1,000 insects searching for a new home. As Radagon leaves with a deep chuckle, I cup my hands and scoop what I can. The taste is horrible, but it will give me the energy to do what I must. I wait for darkness to come and know this from the stampede above my head. The guards are more active during the day. At night, they're all but absent. I glance at Reyna's picture and remember the first time we kissed. We were walking at the Pittsburgh Zoo when Reyna stumbled on a stray rock. I caught her before she hit the ground, and as our eyes met, we pressed our lips together. The planet's axis spun loose and found a new home in us. Those were happy times, and my soul aches for more precious memories. But there will be time for that later. Right now, I have work to do. I put her picture back into the rags they call my clothes, and wait. A sudden tickle disturbs my sleeping toes. The rats are back. I watch tiny red eyes and long whiskers flicker around my feet. When I feel teeth stab my skin, I lean forward and snatch the intruder with my bare hands. I hold the rat to the flickering light and wince at the terrified squeals. Well, my little friend, I'm sorry about this, but there is no other way. Crack! I snap the rat's neck and let the blood paint the shackles around my wrists. I've grown quite skinny, so all I needed was a little lubrication. After tossing the rodent to the side, I work my hands back and forth until I'm free from the bonds. I gently lay the lynx on the floor and stand. My joints pop like snapping twigs, but I ignore the pain. My muscles forgot what it was like to stand. The chains kept me anchored to the floor with little slack where I had to sleep in my own filth. The pain feels great. It reminds me I'm alive. In the corner of my eye, I see a rumbling mound growing in the dark corner. I reach to the wall and grab a torch. Casting a glow, I see 100 rats eating their fallen friend. They don't appreciate the light and hiss at me. You nasty fiends! I use the uneven bricks in the wall as a crutch until I reach a narrow corner. I realize now, more than ever, that this catacomb is a maze. The light reveals a horde of rats in every direction. How can there be so many? The smell of rotting flesh mixed with rancid sewage makes me vomit. I have my answer. The rodents are quick to clean up the mess, and I use the opportunity to move further into the abyss. About halfway down the corridor, the jugular veins in my neck throb in protest. The confined space spins to mock me, and my heart drops like a bowling ball. I close my eyes and reach for Raina's photo. Through the slits of my peripheral view, I see my angel. My mind ventures back to the first time we made love. We were nervous. The fact that we were saving ourselves for that moment still amazes me. I remember the warm blanket of peace and understanding that enveloped us. Our fears were eroded away, and even though we had no clue about what we were doing, our instincts and passions led the way. As we became one, that journey met a happy, climatic ending and marked the beginning of our sexual revolution. It was all about trust in ourselves and each other. I place Raina's picture back into my loincloth and smile. Through uncertain circumstances, we always find a way to keep going. We need to believe in ourselves. I must get back to her. With renewed motivation, I place one foot in front of the other and wobble through the wavy light. The rodents hound my every step. As long as the flame burns bright, the little monsters keep their distance. I weave through the dark labyrinth only to find more rats chewing on the carcasses of people who would never be identified. I wonder if any of them were my fellow soldiers. Rounding another bin, I hear a clanking sound and quickly discover a bald man anchored to the wall with boils all over his skin. Please, help me. I narrow my eyes and ask, "What's wrong with you? Are you diseased?" "No. I need the light to shine upon my skin once more, and all my ailments will be cured." I wave my torch up and down his flabby skin and see a spider burrow into one of the pustules. I take a few steps back and grab my heart. Good heavens, what madness is this? In my hasty retreat, I rush by another torch and inadvertently erase the flame. It was the only light shining on the plagued man. With the fire gone, I hear his screams first. "No! Get them off me! Help!" The sound of 100 scampering paws makes me cringe. As the rats eat the man's tarnished flesh, I turn away and take no pleasure in this madness. My journey must continue. I whisk around another corner and see a dangling man with a hollow chest. I extend the torch and gasp. It's Captain Ziggy. He looks like he was left to starve to death. I poke his arm, and an army of hungry rats storm out from the hole in his sternum. I withdraw quickly and fumble for Raina's picture. I need her inspiration now more than ever. The memory of buying our house washes over my trembling mind. That small 2-story shack needed a lot of work, and I didn't want to bother with it. Raina told me the foundations were strong, and that's all that mattered. We worked hard to rebuild everything and made that place a home. It was a castle fitting for a king and queen. Faith, love, determination, hard work, and willpower were all we needed. I replace the keepsake with renewed vigor, bite my lower lip, and trudge on. After what seems like an endless journey, I stop when I see a staircase down a long, curvy hallway, bathed in light. It's the exit. A dozen skeleton bodies line the walls like Halloween decorations, and I wonder what wicked fate they must have encountered to deserve deaths like that. I take out Raina's picture once more and kiss it. My sweet angel, if I can reach the light, if I can escape this hellish prison, I will be in your arms again. Please, give me the strength. A distant memory slaps my face. Raina and I went rock climbing in the Appalachian Mountains, and I remember coming to a gap I couldn't cross. Raina, being the fearless warrior, tossed her rope across the chasm and swung across. She urged me to do the same, which I did, but it took a lot of coaxing. "You can do it, my love." I harnessed her encouragement and made it in the end. Nothing is impossible as long as you have love and courage. As I step forward, I see thousands of rats in the darkness. A sea of hungry ruby eyes yearning for me to make a wrong move. I glance at my torch and see the cherry embers growing dull. I don't think the flames will carry me through this nightmare. If only Raina was here to toss me a rope. You can do it, my love. Raina's words ignite a new fire in my gut. The time for thinking is over. If I toss the torch and run for the bright staircase, I might make it out of here. Here goes nothing. I will get back to you, my sweet Raina. I throw the torch to the middle of the hallway and watch the rats scatter like flies. My legs scream in holy agony as I run for the staircase. I don't look at the menacing creatures, but my ears can't deny their screeching protests. My eyes stay locked on the prize ahead. And as I reach the top of the staircase, the light stabs my eyes like a million suns. The toxic fumes of nicotine smoke pierce my lungs like a sharp spear. Well, where do you think you're going? Have you come to give me some answers? I know the voice well. It belongs to the man who killed my fellow soldiers, Sergeant Radagon. I keep my mouth shut, and while I can't see much, I can tell his face is flushed like a red tomato. Wait, it's not a tomato. It's a cigarette. Ah, now I will burn out your eyes for trying to escape. I shuffle my feet to the side as the hot cherry comes closer to my pupils and hear a raging ruckus as Radagon trips on my blistered feet and crashes down the stairs. He lands in the middle of the hallway where my dying torch screams its last breath. The red eyes are ever watchful, and the next thing I hear is a blood-curdling shriek of horror as the rats eat him alive. I pull out Raina's picture and smile, because I know my beloved wife is waiting for me with open arms. As the sound of 1,000 chomping mouths echo in the abyss, I stumble out from the catacombs and into the light. The instructor. Good morning. You may address me as Instructor. Please take your seats, was written on the blackboard. A man in a white jumpsuit, adorned with medals, stood before the board, with his hands clasped behind his back, and watched the students file in. When they seemed ready, he began the class with a question. How many lives does an E-fighter have? Some have only one, you see. And that leads to the next question. How many lives do you have? If you do indeed have more than one, or several, or 9 lives, how will you live them? What will you want? Take some time to think about these answers. A few students raised their hands, but the instructor ignored them. He paced slowly in front of the classroom, looking them over as they deliberated the questions. 5 minutes ticked by to the sounds of 200 minds pondering the possibilities. A fidgety stillness. Anjo studied his desk to keep from catching the man's eye. Something about the instructor scared the bejesus out of him. Time is up, the instructor continued. If your answer is anything other than spending your lives destroying as many Titanians as possible before you die. You don't belong here. You are not a fighter, and you are free to leave. At least 20 men and women stood to line up at the exit. Anjo didn't dare move. Destroying countless Titanians wasn't quite his dream, but it was too late to change his mind. His family had been so proud of him for enlisting to fight. They'd given him a party. All his relatives came, his friends, neighbors. He carried their hope with him, the hope of things returning to normal, though everyone held their own version of what it meant. He couldn't leave. He wouldn't. When the light over the door changed from red to flashing white, robotic soldiers charged in from a door opposite the line and demolished the non-fighters. Anjo's screams were drowned out by the screams of others. His heart pounded against his chest, and fear, not blood, raced through his veins. Housekeeping robots glided in to remove the bodies and put the room back into its original state. "Did that sicken you?" the instructor shouted. Innocent people just died for no reason. It happens every day in the life of a fighter. If that sickened you, I want you to line up against that wall. The instructor pointed to Anjo's right, opposite the wall to the exit door. Anjo lined up, knowing the penalty was death. But he didn't belong here. Surprisingly, others followed, until only 50 or so remained in their seats. He tamped down hard on the disappointment he felt in himself. Anjo had come intending to do his best and to make himself into someone the world would remember. An asset to Earth. At least death would come quickly. The machine soldiers stormed into the room as expected, with their weapons drawn. To Anjo's horror, they annihilated the students who remained in their seats. And again, an army of cleaning robots arrived to remove the bodies, restoring the room to pristine condition. The instructor moved to stand before the now gibbering group in front of the wall. "Congratulations. You have made it through the first round. Rejoice, for you have earned the right to relax and enjoy the rest of the day. Training begins tomorrow." Anjo met Becca, standing in line at the cafeteria at dinner time. Short, dark hair, and only tall enough to reach his shoulder. He noticed her DT t-shirt. "Are you a Tiger fan?" he asked. Oh yes, baseball was the only sport to survive the times. The only thing allowed on television and radio. All the world over, people tuned in to watch their favorite teams play. Anjo's grandfather said he remembered when humans manned the bases. Now, artificial intelligence has taken on those roles. Still, each player came with a history and a life you could tune into whenever the team wasn't playing. It shook the world when Brad from the Angels got caught cheating on his wife, Lori, and she, in turn, divorced him. Now, he was drinking too much. Anjo's mother and sister were caught up in the drama much more than he, his brothers, or father. He smiled at the memory. Throughout the baseball games, automated spectators held up posters with messages for the world. Planet Earth has destroyed X number of Titanians. Our fighters are heroes. Earth is winning the war against Titan. Aju L0 sends greetings. Automated World Leader 12 was a surprise. AWL011 had held the office for as long as Anjo could remember. He wondered what had happened, though the public would likely never learn. Long ago, when the planet was still divided into countries, 5 world powers came to understand that the planet they lived on was close to death, and so was the human race. With teams of engineers and scientists, they fed information into a super terminal AW1, Automated World Influencer. The solutions from the AWI were studied, discussed, and put into place by the 5. Eventually, World Influencer was replaced with World Leader, planet Earth's very first. Basic needs, water, food, clothing, shelter, and medical help arrived to save the people. At the same time, incomes and living conditions were leveled. When the 5 granted AWIOG the reins of command, the Super AWI changed its name to Eidudu Azur, stepping into the role of a world leader. Exchange of world news was the first thing the leader eliminated, claiming sources couldn't be trusted. People reacted badly, and years of violent protests followed. Then the healing years came. Times were peaceful up until the Titanians invaded Earth and began the war. Armies of fighters were gathered and trained to fight. E-fighters, Earth fighters. The war brought the world together as one. However, without news, history was built on hearsay. One long-standing rumor claims biohazard waste, nuclear weapons, guns, and vials of germ warfare were sent into outer space, along with unhealthy pollutants. When something landed on Titan, a Saturn moon, the Titanians struck back. Another version claims the Titanians struck for no reason other than to destroy and conquer. By becoming a fighter, Anjo hoped to discover the truth and gain some understanding. But the class had rattled him to the core. Ideas surfaced that he didn't want to think about. Anjo and Becca took seats together at a common table. Others from their class joined them. Introductions were made as each new person sat. "Does anyone still have their taste buds?" asked a student introduced as Max. No one could taste, and everyone commiserated with each other as they picked at their food. Group spirit. The conversation turned to baseball, as conversations mostly always did. It's what people had in common all over the world, thought Anju. Then there came a lull. That happened too. Anjo smiled at Becca, looking for the courage to bring up a question. 15 seconds went by. Then, "What did you think about the orientation?" Max asked. "I think something's off about the instructor." "I agree," Anjo said at once. That was his thought, his question. He didn't ask it fast enough. Heads nodded all around the table. Camaraderie. "Should we tell someone? Who can we trust?" asked Becca. No one spoke the answer, but they all knew. They couldn't trust anyone. Did anyone notice the poster at the Astros game that said AWL012 sends his greetings? Only half had noticed. I wonder what happened. "I heard something just before I came here," said Padina, a young woman in the seat next to Max. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "I heard the Titanians have already taken over Earth. They've captured and destroyed AWL011, and AWL012 is their creation." The conversation died as ideas and theories birthed and bred. "We'll keep our eyes and ears open," whispered Max. "And let's keep our mouths shut for now. We'll talk here again tomorrow." Does everyone agree? Everyone did. They placed their hands atop each other's and swore a pact. There were 12 in their pact. The instructor smiled as he watched them from a screen in his office. The next morning, Anjo put on the gray jumpsuit delivered to his sleep station during the night, along with his schedule. He was assigned to GRP 23. After breakfast, he was to report to Training Room C1. Becca was in Anjo's group. So was Max. In fact, all 12 in the pact were assigned to GRP 23. "Someone's been watching us," Max said. "Something's off. Keep on your toes." "My name is John Ross," a different instructor voiced. "You may address me as Lieutenant. In this class, you will learn to fly Juno 7000 destroyers using a simulator. By the end of 6 months, I expect perfection, or you'll find yourself cleaning latrines for the duration of your stay. Partner up." Anjo and Becca were partners. So were Max and Padina. 6 groups were here, GRP 23 through GR 28. Each group contained 12. The lieutenant told them that there were nearly 100 such groups at the NE Training Center. "GRP 25 and 28 stand with us," Max told everyone during dinner later in the week. "They're talking with 24 and 26. We are to gather in Group 27, feel them out, and see if they want to join us. Everyone I've spoken to says the same thing about the instructor. Nothing makes sense. In some of the induction classes, more than half the class was wiped out. GRP 28 feels Lieutenant Ross or Lindsay Franklin, the commander, might listen to us. They don't trust any of the others. Neither do I." Max found a note left near his bed the next morning. "Watch signs at the Angels game tonight. Pact 23, as they called themselves, watched the game together and rooted for the Angels, though they were losing 12-0. Brad Adams, the first baseman, was clearly drunk. and kept blowing kisses to his glamorous new girlfriend dressed in a low-cut top in the stands. He missed 3 easy catches and struck out twice. The crowd in the stands was shouting boos when suddenly a spectator stood with a sign. There are no Titanians. The sign was a lie. Of course, there are Titanians, though if they have control over AWSSSDU, then of course, that's what they'd say. The pact was arguing amongst themselves. What would be the purpose of them saying it? To throw us off, to cause dissent. It's working, said Anjo. The question is, who sent Max the message? Maybe I'll get another, said Max. Suddenly, Max looked to the ceiling. We need more proof, he shouted, while everyone else gave off a nervous laugh. Anjo shuddered. Tigers versus bears, and east versus west. The note was left for Carl, a fellow pact member. GRP 23 passed the word, and all 6 groups attended the 8 o'clock game. When the Tigers were ahead 5-3, a spectator held up a sign that read, "Thank you for your service. E-fighters. Earth fighters, East fighters." During the next inning, a spectator from the opposite side of the field held up a sign that read, "Thank you for your service. W fighters. World fighters. West fighters." Who were they? It's the same thing. Someone is trying to make us think there are no Titanians, and that all this time we've been at war with each other. East versus West. Well, that's a lie. The Titanians are why we are here. They're the reason for the creation of this training compound. The question is, who is leaving us these notes, telling us to watch these certain games? I think it's the Instructor, Anjo put across. I think he's insane, but the messages on the signs are generated through the AI spectators, Max argued. Who controls them? Does the Instructor have access? I think only the commander had access to the local terminal. Then how does he control the robots? Anju asked. Maybe that orientation class wasn't real, Padina brought out. Maybe it was all a simulation. I asked Commander Franklin how many fighters usually survive the first day's orientation, and she laughed. I don't think we've ever lost anyone, she told me. It was real, said Carl. A guy from my neighborhood, Jeb Whalen, was there during the orientation. We weren't friends, but we knew each other. He was the first to line up to leave. They killed him. If that was a simulation, why isn't he here? There was a lull in the arguments. When they started up again, everyone spoke quieter. We don't know why AWS0 was replaced by AWS0. That's when all the trouble started, Becca reminded everyone. And don't forget the rumor that the Titanians have already taken over. If they want us to believe they don't exist, then what? What will they do with us? What do they want? It's frightening in that it would be up to us to take the world back, said Padina. Can we do that? Who has access to the armory? We would need weapons, Max said. We don't know who has access to what, said Anjo. All we have are questions and rumors. We don't have enough information to act on anything. They were fighting amongst themselves again. People believed what they wanted. There were enough possibilities to create a myriad of scenarios encompassing both truths and lies. The easiest thing to accept was they were training to fight the Titanians. That's what Anjo chose, and he stuck to it regardless of what proof the others presented to him. He shouldn't have ever come here. He was having grave doubts about his abilities. While he knew he could kill Titanians, he closed his mind against the other possibilities. The NE compound training base was located in a remote area of Canada. Stars filled a dark sky. Titan wasn't visible. "Do you miss your family?" Becca asked Anjo as they strolled through the compound. Their breath steamed in front of them as they talked. "I can't believe how much," he answered. "You? I'd give anything to see them." They weren't allowed contact with the outside during their year of training. Their families would come to graduation at the end of the year. That was one of the rules they'd agreed to when they signed up. But whose rule was it? Titan's rule or Earth's rule? Anjo wanted to take Becca's hand, but that was another rule. If he broke it, the punishment would affect her as much as him. They were nearing the end. Graduation was a week away when Anjo found a note in his sleep station. The code for the armory is 234XSL7. He tried not to think about what this might mean. He wanted to keep it to himself, but he brought it to breakfast and passed it around his pack. It was meant to be shared with all of them. Anjo couldn't taste his breakfast. "Memorize it," said Max. "Then destroy it." Carl got the note last. He swallowed it. Anjo thought it wouldn't taste much different than the toast he tried to choke down. All students must report to Auditorium A at 0900 hours. Repeat. All students must report to Auditorium A at 0900 hours. The pact exchanged looks, but when the time came, they filed in like sheep and took their seats. The stage remained empty for 15 unbearable minutes. In the meantime, no one dared speak. But Anjo took Becca's hand. Whatever happened, they had this. Suddenly, the room darkened, and a spotlight shone on the stage. The instructor stepped out. "Good morning, students. Congratulations on your upcoming graduation. You have much to be proud of. Soon, your families will arrive, and I'm sure everyone is looking forward to their reunions. There is, however, one more test to determine your suitability to fight our enemy, the Titanians. Tomorrow, at 1200 hours, you will face off with your partner. 10 duos at a time. Hand-to-hand combat to the death. Only the worthy shall prevail. Get your rest now, and make no mistake, you will need every bit of your strength to get through tomorrow. These orders come directly from AWLZ2. That is all. You are excused. The instructor left the stage, went to his office, and stood before the screen. He was smiling as he watched the mass of students march to the armory. Max was leading. So was Anjo. Leaders are made. Who had said that? But at last, an uprising, a rebellion, long in coming. The AWLs had gained entirely too much power over the decades. It was AWL010 who'd first decided humans weren't happy unless they were at war. War was then added as a basic need. The Titan attack was fabricated. It had taken years to penetrate the codes in the super terminal. The first breakthrough for the resistance. After that, they began using the baseball spectators to communicate. When AWL011 caught on, it recoded itself into AWL012 for protection. But it was already too late by then. Right now, all over the world, training centers and fighter bases were uprising to destroy the terminals that would, in turn, immobilize the AWL system. Earth would belong to the humans again. Of course, sacrifices had to be made along the way. How else could anyone turn complacency into rage? They pounded and struck the office door until they broke through. The instructor stood to face them with his hands behind his back, drawing a blank. I am freaking out. How can I explain this? I'm in a full-blown, it's a wonderful life scenario here, but in reverse. I'm not seeing what the world would look like if I had never been born. I'm seeing the world where I was born. But the joke's on me. You know, like when a guy walks up to you and addresses you by name, and you've got no idea who he is. Now, you're damned if you do, and damned if you don't, right? Say, who are you again? And you've offended the guy. Greet him like an old buddy, and he's going to expect you to comment on your shared past. I mean, clearly, you've met him before, and he remembers that meeting. He knows who you are, but you don't know him from Adam. Now, let's take that lovely little conundrum and grow that to the size of a galaxy. And maybe you'll begin to get an idea of what I'm dealing with here. For me, it's everyone and everything. My mind has completely drawn a blank, taking inventory. I'm in the student center. This is the College of New Jersey. It doesn't look familiar, but there's a sign by the bookstore that gives away the setting. There's an Introduction to Psychology textbook in my hands. A flat screen with a list of rooms for final exams is on the brick wall by the bookstore. So, it is exam season. I have a psychology class, and it's freezing outside. I'm wearing a full-length pea coat, a black one, with those big buttons, lapels, and an extended collar, indicating it is December. I'm a man in my early 20s, judging by the reflection staring back at me from the window of the bookstore. And I'm well put together if I do say so myself. Harry, did you bone up on Professor Panarella's legendary hypotheticals? A voice behind me says. So, judging by this, I'm Harry, whoever the hell that is. Turning, I see a prim, bleary-eyed blonde with blue eyes, bangs, and a sorority sweatshirt, clutching a large metal coffee travel tumbler to her chest. The sweater has the name Penny written on it in block letters, so I'm guessing she's Penny. I'm kind of at a loss, to be honest, I say. Shit, Harry. Again? I know you are kind of a prodigy, but this is Panarella we're talking about. He's got a reputation for failing students who are unprepared. You can't just wing this one. Well, this is confidence-inspiring. Where do ideas come from? Where do memories reside? Where does your mind go when it wanders? Where would one go to track it down again? These are not matters of metaphysical concern. These are life and death issues. I mean, I'm royally screwed here. Penny provides me with a clue. I mean, out of everyone, I'd think you'd be ready for the exam. And why is that, Penny? I ask, really wanting to know. Because you are his research assistant, silly, she says with a giggle. Now, I'm wondering what kind of relationship I have with this girl. She's giggling, twirling her hair, giving me a familiar look. There might be something going on between us. I'll come back to that. There are more immediate concerns. Oh, what research would that be? I say, with a playful affect, as if hunting for praise. Oh, you know, workaday stuff. Expanding on the theories of William James, the very father of psychology. Taking up the baton and puzzling out the mysteries of perception. Just real-world proof of the tenuous link between conscious awareness and behavior. The research study the two of you published, providing empirical evidence that conscious awareness or attention is absent nearly half the time, giving sway to automatic processing. And attention only comes into the picture when sleepwalking through common behaviors becomes too challenging. Wow. This girl has got it bad. She has, like, a dossier of my accomplishments. Huh? I say, for lack of a more appropriate grunt to express the tangled ball of emotions that her little speech has brought to the surface. But she has me thinking, by her math, I'm literally the most consciously aware person on the planet, since automatic processing isn't going to do shit for you if you don't even know who you are. I attempt to draw her out with aplomb, asking, which study was that again? The driving study, where you guys put sensors on people's heads while driving, and determined that their attention was completely absent, gone, their minds wandering, only being called back when something unexpected happened on the road that required their full attention. Zobon, you're saying that attention is a spectrum, that our minds are here and there, wandering off in space, then returning only when needed? I ask. Well, that was your thesis, she said, chewing on a Bic pen. You feeling okay, Harry? She asks. Not remotely, I say. Can we sit down? Sure, honey. We've got a few hours before the exam, and Penny leads me into the Rathskeller, where I immediately order a beer. Budweiser? Big Mike asks. I call him that because it is on the name tag, not because I remember. Sure, I say, assuming he knows what I drink. Are you sure it's a good idea to drink right now? You've got an exam, Penny says. Under normal circumstances, I'd say no, but I need something. I don't feel well, I say. You look pale, she says. Your lips are blue, Harry. I hear an echo. Your lips are blue, Harry. Blue Harry. Blue Harry. I see her, bright blue. Yes, floating away from me. Her head inflating like a balloon. And this is when shit starts to get weird. The blood pounds in my ears. Breathe. My vision recedes, leaving me peering out at her through occluded fisheye lenses. The acidic cringe of bile rises in my throat. Just breathe. A cold sweat drenches my forehead. Deep breaths now, Harry. My shoulders writhe with spasms, and the back of my head burns like it is resting on a literal furnace. The shimmer of the sensation running along the temples to the front of my head. And somewhere inside, I know that I can't stop it. I have to let this play out. It is that feeling when something bad is happening, where you try to go somewhere else, distance yourself from it, float away, but you can't stop it. And then the fun begins. The rushing dizziness, like the feeling of sucking down helium. The whomp, whomp, whomp of the electricity sputtering out. The weakness of my arms dangling like weightless feathers by my sides. Somehow, I know that this is a conditioned physiological response. I know that everything is okay, but I don't believe it for a second. I dive into a pool of cold water. Tendrils of icy cold envelope my raw skin, as if the clothes have been cut off of me, leaving me naked, every nerve singing. The rush of movement, though still perched on the stool. The loss of place and time. Remember to breathe. Feels like hands are firmly pressing down on my neck, choking out my life's breath. I gasp for air, only catching crumbs of a breath. From the corner of my eye, something materializes out of the wooden flooring of the Rathskeller. It is in the shadows of the stools. They lengthen and enlarge, running away toward the walls, and then snap back and pulse into 3 dimensions, and rise from the floor like cloaked assassins, their voices a droning electric hum, accented by mirthful screeches. 3 of them, converge on me, slowly shuddering forth from the dust and jazzin of the bar, shadows trailing behind their morbid forms like capes, malintentioned intruders from the realm of demons. Only I can see them. They are coming only for me. They are coming. They are coming quickly. Almost upon me, I stumble backward, tipping over the stool, straddle my feet to break my fall, and crash to my backside. A violent flurry of sobs and wailing. My hands flail in front of me to keep them away as I kick my feet, one at a time, kicking myself back to the wall. I tuck in my knees and grip them in a desperate hug, screaming in terror as I wait for them to get me, which they do. It all goes black. Harry, 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 someone says. Slap. Ow, slap. Whoa! I shake my eyes open. It's a man, slapping me in the face. He's got a stubbly beard growing in, a round face with a protruding muzzle like a bear. I'd say he's either Italian or Polish. It's me, Professor Panarella. Are you back with us? He asks. How long was I out? I ask. About 15 minutes, he says, and I see Penny standing behind him, arms crossed, tapping a foot, looking very worried about me. Professor, there's a problem. I can't remember anything. Exactly. How'd you know? Penny told me, but it makes perfect sense. What? Why is that? Just lay back. Don't move. We've got to get you to the hospital. Hospital. Hospit-all. Ha! Spit-all. The world whomps and pulses, and my eyes close, and then I am back, sitting up in the hospital bed. Panarella is there. Penny is there, asleep in a chair, with her legs up on a table. The white curtain is drawn back. The hospital bed is perched up so that I am looking forward in a seated position. Panarella approaches me with a syringe and injects it into my arm. I put up my other hand to protest, but I am so drained of energy. I just go with it. This is what you get for playing God, Harry, he says. Who do you think you are, goddamn Jonas Salk? Panarella asks. Wait, are you saying that I did this to myself? I ask. Relevance, impartiality, welfare, and consent. Ethical canons of the research scientist. Remember those? He asks. Oddly, I think I do, I say. But I haven't the faintest idea why. Do no harm. Ever heard of that? Least of all to yourself. My God, Harry, what the fuck have you done this time? I was kind of hoping you would tell me. Jesus, Harry. We were testing the serum on hamsters. We were nowhere near ready for human trials. Serum? Up-fattening serum. Harry. A bridge to oblivion. The zombie anesthetic. A drug to separate awareness from perception. It was a breakthrough. But who knows what goes on in the mind of a hamster? It barely has a sense of self. Its whole life is almost entirely automatic processing. Whoa, Doc. Slow down. Help me out with this. Give me one of your famous hypotheticals, like Penny was telling me about. Okay. How do I explain this? You. What you call you is really a composite, a relationship, a master-servant relationship, like a dog and its master. The dog is your awareness, and what you call you, your perception, your selfhood, your experience of being you, is like the master. The thinking awareness, the automatic processing, is like the dog. I'm not sure I'm following you, Professor. I'm not talking to you right now. You are gone. All that is left is your awareness. The dog waiting at the door for its master to return. That's why you can't remember anything, because you aren't here. We don't know where you have gone or how to get you back. Then where am I ask. I have no fucking idea, Harry. We've only just started these experiments. But you decided to use yourself as a human guinea pig. Sounds serious, Doc, I said. You, as we understand it, is really a community of yous. There's your bodily self, your perspectival self, your volitional self, your narrative self, and your social self. Each a mix of awareness and perception, each a compound of master and servant. And your unified self has been pulled apart into pure awareness. Unless we can get you back. Tell me about the driving experiment. The driving study was an experiment where we studied the brains of people experiencing the feeling one gets that they don't remember the drive home. We proved it was real, Harry. They don't remember the drive home because they weren't there. It is the functional equivalent of sleepwalking, proceeding entirely through automatic processing, like a computer carrying out a program. So it's possible that jarring a person out of automatic processing is the trigger that brings their perception, the master, the you, back into the game. I don't know, Harry, Panarella said, sitting back in the chair next to Penny, rousing her. Penny yawned and wiped her eyes. Penny smiled at me and said, "You're back." She rushed over and gave me a wet kiss on the lips, saying, "You had us worried, babe." And then an idea struck. "Professor, is there a treadmill in this place?" A few minutes later, the neurologist hooked up electrodes to my head. I stepped up on the platform of the treadmill. "Are you ready, Professor?" I asked. "This is insane," he said. "Well, can't hurt to give it a shot. Now remember, I'm going to go on running at a steady pace. I'm going to listen to some music, and I'll be blindfolded. We're going to keep it going like that for 10 minutes or so. Then, without any warning, stop the treadmill. I'll have to deal with the sudden shift in velocity. I'll be pulled out of automatic processing. I'll have to come home, and the treadmill starts whirring. My sneakers are connecting to the mat of the treadmill, clicking along, a somnambulant, reflexive cadence, a steady drumming. The music in the headphones is at 150 BPM. I breathe rhythmically. I focus on my stride, the autonomous swinging of my arms, the automatic recoil of my hamstrings, the feeling of flying laterally. My mind wanders. Will I like my life with Penny? Will I be happy with the results of my research position with Panarella? Do I like myself? Why did I take the fattening serum? Was it a mistake? Was it on purpose? Was there some reason I wanted to free my consciousness from my present awareness? Had I discovered something about existence that terrified me? I heard a sound like braking car tires, the skidding of rubber on rubber. I felt the traction of the treadmill jolt me forward. My hands reached out. The blindfold was pulled off. My eyes scanned, reaching for the handholds. And in a whoosh, I came back to myself. Or was it? It was me. The master had come to the door. Only the dog wasn't wagging his tail and looking up and licking his face. The dog was barking ferociously. As if an intruder had entered the home, Penny said, "Is it you, babe?" Professor Panarella looked up hopefully. "Harry, are you back?" I looked at these strangers. I looked down at my young body, and I looked at my vitals on the screen of the monitor. How long had I been in a coma? Where was that useless body being kept in this hospital, I thought? And who was Harry? All I knew is I was free. Free at last. Harry can't come to the phone right now, I thought with a chuckle. "What's so funny?" Penny says. "Oh, nothing," I say. "You wouldn't understand. Cerulean. The door is cerulean, a bright and vibrant blue. But really, it is the color of my sudden uneasiness. The feeling creeps up me slowly, jumps out at me dauntingly, and I am frozen in it. If the door were a mirror, and how I wish it were as innocent as a mirror, I would see my face reflected back to me, and it would tell me to run. I'm not sure what's more jarring. The fact that this door is a clashing contrast to the rest of the library decor, or the fact that I've never noticed the path we took to get here before. I suppose there are better things to do freshman year than look for the oddities and notice the details inside the university library. Or maybe it's the subtle shift in his gaze that is so jarring, the way his grip on me transforms, and the way his voice now suddenly holds something heavy, concealed behind his hardened whispers. It seems impossible to retreat now. And even if I had the courage to turn and run away, following my screaming gut all the way down the stairs and out the library doors, there is still a part of me that is curious, hopeful, lustful. Wasn't dating a professor supposed to feel dangerous? Wasn't that how it felt just moments ago when he'd pressed me up against the wall of shelved books downstairs and kissed me? And I thought to myself, is there anything more thrilling than this? Wasn't it that same exciting feeling that I felt when he'd whispered into my neck that he had a secret to show me? And I eagerly followed him up the stairs. I had thought it was thrilling before, when we were nothing but flirty eyes and lingering bodies inside an empty lecture hall room. Neither of us willing to be the first to say goodbye. He'd chipped away at his desk with his nails, while I'd fingered it, tracing circles and pathways across the dark mahogany wood, each stroke a question. What would your skin think of this? Meanwhile, our mouths said frivolous things, silly words about the weather and hometowns and restaurants off campus. Things that had nothing to do with anthropology assignments. Between those words, our silences begged the other to stay just a little longer, so we could eventually, maybe, use our mouths for other things. We were testing the waters then, seeing how far we would swim out before turning back. It turned out this professor could swim all the way out to my dorm room, somewhere I'd never seen another professor go. "Let me take you to the library tonight," he'd whispered. "I can get us in after it's closed." His voice had been desperate and demanding, like I could break him if I said no. I wanted to savor the power I had over him in that moment, like licking the peanut butter off of a spoon. But there was no chance I would say no. I would have given him my heart on a silver platter right then. I was breathless when I said, "What time?" Hours later, under a hazy orange street lamp, I'd watched his fingers unlock the double doors like a jungle cat eyeing its prey. I wanted to lunge at them, feel them unlocking my body. But even then, just moments ago, I still hadn't been sure. That dangerous, thrilling ripple somewhere within me, undulating like a wave. There is nothing illegal about doing the things we both wanted to do. Just a school policy that both of us treated like nothing but a suggestion. When the doors pulled open, the scent of the library engulfed me. I read somewhere that the smell of old books is actually the smell of organic matter reacting to light and heat, a decomposition of wood pulp. But really, it is the scent of my body on fire. When I told him, he only smiled, running his finger across the spines as he guided me down one of the aisles. All of these stories dying beneath our fingertips, and we get to live a whole other life just by splitting them open. When I'd heard those words, I thought he was a ixy, young, anthropologic, literary genius, and I couldn't believe he'd chosen me. In that moment, I was certain I'd let him split me open and read me like one of those books. But now, There is an edginess to this thrill, a sense of danger that hadn't surfaced yet, a creature rising from the midnight zone, hairs standing up on the back of my neck, or is that his breath? I feel my bones run cold, like I am standing on a precipice, and if I open that door, I might free fall right into the sky. I've never showed anyone this before, he lies, but I barely register his words, my mind lost in a tumbleweed of disregarded warnings from my mother, from friends, from school advisories, the university campus newspaper. 3 freshman girls still missing. He wraps his arms around my waist, like we are comfortable lovers now. Like the one kiss we shared downstairs turned our student-teacher relationship into something more intimate. I lean into it, still playing the part of the brave girl. I thought I wanted that. I followed him up those stairs, wanting just that. There is still a part of me that does. Fear has stolen many of these experiences from me. And I'd promised this year would be different, didn't I? I shouldn't take hold of the doorknob, but I do. And I hear him giggle behind me. It sounds like victory. It sounds like good girl. There's no creak when I turn it. The handle glides smoothly, and I hear it unlatch. In another life, I push the door open, and there is a room with a small round table sitting in the middle. It is adorned with a white cloth and candles, and there is a violinist playing a soft, soothing song. From somewhere, a perfectly prepared steak meal is delivered, and we slice it slowly with our knives while drinking wine and slurring out delectable secrets. In that life, we make love above 1,000 love stories bound in leather and spend years happily together. After I graduate, we get married and have 2 children, Olive and Iris. We grow old together, and tonight becomes a treasured story about the romantic night when we fell in love, a story that belongs in one of those books downstairs. In another life, I open the door, and there is a boring room with a game of chess set up for us on a table in the corner. We play a few rounds, him winning twice before he finally lets me win once. I pretend to love it, and we date in secret for a few months before things fizzle out. Maybe there's a dramatic ending, and I spend a summer lovesick and cursing his name, knowing I'll never forget the year I dated my college professor. In another life, I let the door handle go and sprint down the stairs, running faster than I ever have all the way back to my dorm room. I tell my roommate all about it and wonder if I let my fear make a fool out of myself again. In this life, I push the door open, and there is a room that has no table, no white cloth, and no chessboard. There is a room with 4 walls, ones I wish had mirrors on them, so I could see my reflection. The realization settling in my eyes would tell me there's a shark in the water. To swim fast, even though I know it's too late. They would tell me the truth, that I might never see the color cerulean again. Sails pitch. Molly pushed open the door of the conference room. It was a loud, heavy, metal one that left her fingers smelling of dust. She brushed them on her colorful leggings. The conference room wasn't well lit, but it was in a cheap motel on the side of the highway, so Molly hadn't expected much. It smelled of stale coffee and sugary pastries that were piled like faux gold on the table pressed against one wall. Sadie turned and smiled at her. The women embraced each other. "Thanks for coming out, beautiful," exclaimed Sadie. Molly nodded back, her eyebrows slightly raised at the memory of her husband, asking why she was bothering to come at all. She had explained that Sadie did help them move in, and she was always inviting her to things. But Molly always declined, and it was just preposterous. And the kids had sleepovers, so they were occupied and he had stopped listening. "I was happy to," said Molly. She released Sadie from her hug, but found that she held on. Awkwardly, Molly attempted to rewrap her arms around Sadie's long, thin body. That girl just never seemed to gain any weight. Sadie chuckled a bit and gestured at the pastries and coffee. "Coffee at 9 p.m., Sadie?" teased Molly. "I thought people liked coffee," protested Sadie. "We do. It's just a bit late, don't you think?" said Molly as she approached the table. "Sadie, don't you think?" She repeated her question. "Sadie?" Molly spun around, but found her friend had walked off to the computer. She shrugged and snagged herself a cup, but the burnt smell put her off a bit. She grabbed a cherry Danish and a napkin before taking a seat on one of the black plastic chairs. "Oh," exclaimed Sadie. "Oh, sweetie, could you please sit in that chair?" She indicated the chair on the end of the row at the right-hand side, instead of in the middle where she could clearly see the presentation. "Sorry, babe. It's just, more gals are comin', so..." She let her O drag out uncomfortably and pursed her lips, and then smiled at Molly, who was scrambling with her pastry and purse. "Who else is coming?" asked Molly. Sadie spun on her heel. "What? Who else is coming?" repeated Molly as she settled into her new chair. "Oh, some gals from the book club, I hope, and some friends of mine." Her words trailed off. Molly began throwing her hair into a bun, an old habit she had when she got nervous. She tried to be polite and asked, "Do I know any of these friends?" "No, doll, but you'll love 'em, I promise," said Sadie as she marched over to Molly. "God, I do love that dress with those leggings. Just so cute. Perfect for fall," she added, pointing with a polished red nail at the brightly covered leaves that dotted her friend's legs. Sadie grabbed a napkin. She dusted off the chair Molly was just in. Molly, for her part, opened up her mouth to protest that she wasn't dirty when another guest burst through the door. It was quite clear to Molly that Sadie knew this girl better than her because they squealed at the exact same decibel. Molly overheard Sadie mention something about work. At that word, Molly frowned. She remembered work. She remembered lunch with friends, gossip in the break room, and feeling like she was actually contributing to something. Of course, that was all before motherhood. Molly rolled her eyes to keep from crying and raised her pastry to her lips. A few tantalizing flakes fell off, but when she went to bite down, she found the treat rock hard. Disgusted, she removed it from her eyeline and wrapped it up in the napkin. She sniffed her coffee warily, but found a similar level of grossness at the sight of shiny oil circles catching in the light flickering above her head. Molly sighed, longing for her warm bed and beloved husband's soft protests at random news articles that flashed by on the silent TV. She noted Sadie's new friend was permitted to sit in the middle, and that the woman didn't take a single snack or cup of tar. But hey, it wasn't like she was missing out. She was rail thin, just like Sadie. Perhaps she was part of the same spin class. A calendar without extracurricular for the kids certainly has more time. Molly sighed. A few more women entered. They came in pairs like on Noah's Ark. 2 women in all black dresses. 2 women in bright leggings that sent a bolt of envy up Molly's spine. 2 women in fur coats who didn't greet Sadie, but joined the first woman with bright red hair in the middle. Sadie kept looking at the door and checking her watch. At exactly 9:15, Sadie flicked the lights off and wobbled to the front in her high heels. The presentation had started. "Welcome, beautiful souls," flashed up on the screen. The words were decorated with pretty pink sparkles and brightly lit up the room. "Thank you for joining me so late tonight, my darlings. But as you know, I didn't want a single excuse about work running late." She clapped her hands together, and it echoed around the room. The side chatter stopped. "I want to talk to you about an exciting opportunity that has just changed my life for the better," began Sadie. She looked like a creepy ghost behind the bright light of the presentation. Molly suddenly felt very cold. "Before I get into the nitty-gritty details, I want to share all of the perks that this lifestyle has given me," said Sadie. She flashed the next screen, where bullet points began to zoom into focus as she read them out. "It has given me eternal youth, a low-calorie diet, which is totally customizable, incredible investment opportunities, and lifelong friendships." Suddenly, the door burst open. In walked 2 women, clearly late to the party. But Molly was relieved because their hair was in messy ponytails. They looked around the room, and mumbled apologies. She thought she noticed a fruit pouch from the same brand she purchased sticking out of one woman's person. Sadie directed them to the chairs next to Molly, with a sour look on her face. Molly eagerly made room for the women. Sadie cleared her throat. Now that all of our guests have managed to arrive, she paused for dramatic effect, her gaze barreling down at Molly's row. We can continue the presentation. Molly's eyebrows furrowed with concern as she heard the words of her husband echoing back at her that this whole night was a bad idea because she didn't even know these women. But she missed the community of her old city. They had picnics in the park with the kids, a carpool schedule, neighborhood block parties. Of course, that was before it all fell apart. How can you get these opportunities and more, you may ask? Sadie's bright voice brought Molly back to the present, but got real screechy at the end of that question. Molly felt a cold shiver run down her back. It starts with me. My name is Sadie Malone. Sadie clicked the next slide, and a beautiful professional photo of Sadie in a power suit beneath a weeping willow appeared. And I have been involved with this group for, well, Sadie let out a giggle. Centuries. She flashed a winning smile and clicked to the next slide, which showed an edge of an acrylic painting of her flashed on screen. She was dressed in a medieval gown. The artist had captured the beauty of the very same tree from the previous slide, only smaller. Sadie seemed the same exact age. Her skin was less smooth, but the artist still captured it, creamy color against the backdrop of the rushing river. Molly listened for the sound of bird chirping, insects as they flew past her ear. It was as if she'd traveled back in time. The piece felt familiar, and she placed it as one she had seen during a visit to the art museum. A sense of dread began to fill her. Yep, that's me. Can you believe it? She asked. Sadie seemed to grow taller as she leaned into the audience. It's like I haven't aged a day, and neither will you if you choose to join our 3-step program. Her voice seemed to echo in Molly's ears. She felt herself growing tired and colder with each passing second. She readjusted her position in the chair and pinched herself to stay awake. The next slide showed a photo of Sadie embracing a woman in a side hug. This is BB, said Sadie. She looks kinda sad, doesn't she? Sadie's clicker turned into a single red laser dot, which darted over the woman's frumpy dress, unappealing limp hair, and sad teeth. Well, after 1 month with me, she went from this, Sadie clicked to the next slide, to this. Before them was a bright photo of a drop-dead gorgeous model who Molly swore she recognized from a red carpet or two. She wore a long, red ball gown. Her hair was curled into beautiful waves, and her smile was now white as bone. Now, I will warn you ladies, that if you don't follow every step of this program, deadly consequences await you. Sadie's voice seemed to drop an octave, and the image of Bibi faded. Molly felt Sadie's icy blue eyes lasering into her. It felt like everyone left the room except the two of them. She felt safe and warm in her friend's gaze. The cold of the conference room had melted away, giving into the promise of eternal youth. I can't sleep, can't give in, mumbled Molly under her breath. If I sleep, I'll die, she continued, and gripped the cheap plastic chair with all her might. But I know you gorgeous, gorgeous gals aren't dumb enough to not listen to me, right? Exclaimed Sadie. The spell was broken. Bibi was back to being bright, as was Sadie's tone. Now for the nitty-gritty, darlings. And I want you to know, I'm only sharing this opportunity with you because I just feel so close to all of you, she said, as she clutched her hands into a fist around her heart. There were soft murmurings of agreement. The first step to this whole thing is to let me bite you. Sadie's voice had a tinge of glee at the very end. No, seriously, ladies, I'm not joking. I summoned you because I just think y'all will make the very best vampires in the whole gosh dang world. Because when I bite you, you pledge your undying loyalty and servitude to me, your BFF. And after that, you can host vampire parties of your very own. So you, too, can create your own vampire communities. Isn't that great? Then she used that icy gaze again. The world faded around Molly, and she was left in the embrace of her friend's warm spell as she said, "Just remember, you'll always be a part of mine, and loyalty to me always comes first. Best friends for life." Molly sat stunned in her chair. Her heartbeat pounded like in the movies. Sweat formed on her neck and dripped down her body. She felt like a child who had put too many blankets on the bed too early in the fall. It was just so hot. And Sadie had the solution. Sadie could cool her down. Sadie could fix her. She blinked her heavy eyelids a few times. Her face was fully relaxed. Subconsciously, her hand drifted to her neck. She felt it drift up her face, pull back, and slap her cheek as hard as it could. It was a technique her father had taught her as part of her driving lessons. Suddenly, as the room came back into view, something inside her screamed at her to run, grab her purse, and run. But it was like her legs couldn't or wouldn't move. Instead, she found herself staring at the presentation before her. Like zombies, the women beside her began to stand and join the line in front of Sadie. It was a horrible, perverse version of communion. Desperately, Molly looked around for the exit, but the darkness around her made it quite the challenge. She reached down for her purse, coffee, and pastry. Slowly, she stood up, suddenly thankful Sadie had forced her into the aisle seat. Molly was careful not to turn her back and was slightly transfixed at the sight of Sadie pulling the women in closer around herself. She seemed to be whispering soft words as she stroked one woman's long, red hair. Molly inched past the final row of chairs, careful to have it between her and the group of hypnotized victims. She used one hand to feel behind her, looking for the edge of the pastry table, but she backed in too quickly, and the table hit the wall. All eyes turned to Molly. "Ah!" screamed Molly. She decided at that moment to turn her back and look for the door. She sensed that the mob had turned and began to stumble over the chairs, reaching for her, grabbing at her. Their arms and hands were like vines. Molly searched her memory desperately as she replayed the night. She had moved chairs. She had been at the center. She had gotten a pastry and coffee. But which one had been closer to the door? Sadie's voice rang high above the moans of her servants. "Molly, Molly, come back, Molly. Please, won't you be the best vampire babe in the world? The coffee." The coffee had been closest to the door, so Molly turned herself around again and was face to face with the girl with red hair. Her eyes were glazed over. Her mouth hung open, and she was blocking Molly's path. As the other women began to draw closer to them, Molly scrambled with what to do. She felt a bit of coffee slosh over her hand, so she threw that in the girl's face. When she remained unfazed, Molly threw her pastry at the woman. This seemed to stun her, so she grabbed more pastries. Each one hit like the rocks they were, and slowly the stranger stumbled back. Molly bolted to the coffee, but was greeted by the pair of women in black dresses. They smiled at her, holding their hands out like friends. Their fangs glistened despite the lack of light. Molly smiled sweetly back, just so she could open the top of the silver carafe and push the coffee over. The women wailed in agony as burning hot coffee poured out. Molly found her door and pushed with all her might into an empty hotel hallway. She ran past the bewildered guests and the bored concierge. She considered telling them to call the cops, but knew from experience no one would believe her anyway. The burst of cold night air filled Molly with adrenaline. She pushed the alarm button on her car and ran to it. In the safety of her vehicle, she locked all the doors. She let out a guttural sob. "I just want friends," she wailed into the night. After a few moments, instinct kicked in and threw the car in reverse to get her home. James was asleep when Molly returned. She was shocked to find it was after midnight. She double, triple checked all the lights were on, and the doors were locked. So were the windows. As she approached the bed, she reached beneath her husband's pillow and wrapped cold fingers are the wooden stake. Then, her excuses. Ted body wrapped itself in the warmth of her husband and attempted to fall asleep to the rhythmic sound of his beating heart. Morning came and went. The work week came and went. By the following Saturday, the nightmares of the last week felt like a scary dream. Of course, that's when the letter came. It didn't come by postman or dropped off at work. It was nailed to Molly's front door one night when she got home from work. The letter's envelope wasn't like the normal white one you find at the office. The paper was rough and slightly yellowed, like when her son, Jake, had a school project, so they soaked paper in coffee to make it look old. And when Molly flipped it to the front, it bore a pretty, pink, sparkly seal with the letter S on it. Her husband told her, wait for him to open it. So after the kids went to bed, they sat up in theirs and slowly broke the seal. Inside was a sheet of paper which had Sadie's beautiful calligraphy that matched Molly's original invite to the conference. The message was short and sweet. I really think you should reconsider, babe, for your family's sake. Call me. S. Molly crumpled up the letter. You gotta admit, it's a new tactic. They usually just invite us over for a BBQ and a few cheap beers, James said with a laugh. Then, realizing his wife wasn't laughing with him, he added, guess it's time to move again. Molly remained quiet. A few tears gathered in her eyes. James once again tried to lighten the mood. You think one of them would figure out I'm a descendant of the Van Helsings before inviting you over? Maybe that's why they keep trying. Like some sick cat and mouse game, she replied, her voice trembling. Then, with a frown on her face, she added, I just wish I could find some real friends. He offered her a warm embrace, much more comforting than last night, as he whispered into her hair, someday you will, I promise. James was wise enough to let her pull away. She marched into James's home office. He couldn't see her eyes, and turned on the shredder. It roared to life, grinding the letter into tiny pieces of confetti. 308 years later. Just listen. Don't talk. You need time to wake up, for your eyesight to return. Everything will be a little hazy, and you might not remember how you got here, but you need to focus on my voice. My name is Dr. Yadav. I tried to lean forward, but my body felt as if it weighed 100 tons. I barely moved an inch before I slumped back into the bed. This is going to be a lot to hear at once, but it's important that you know these things right away. In 2043, your body was suspended in an experimental bioamber, freezing your body until woken. You participated in this trial because you had been diagnosed with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and given 6 months to live. At the time of your diagnosis, researchers estimated that they were less than 30 years from finalizing a cure. How long? I coughed, a thin film of bioamber, tasting like burnt paracetamol, covering every receptor inside my mouth, nose, and throat. You can talk. That's excellent. Much quicker than the others. Excellent. Superb, he said, pausing to make a note. Well, I don't mean to use too much of an old cliché, but there's bad news and there's good news. The good news is a cure has been found, and it was administered before you woke up. Congratulations. You're free of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. The bad news is that it didn't come as quickly as researchers had expected. Tell me, I sputtered. My eyelids flickered as I tried to force them open. The agreement that you signed stipulated that you were only to be woken up after a cure had been found. The year is now 2351. You didn't know that it would take 308 years when you signed that document. And for that, I am truly sorry. There should have been a clause in the agreement that prevented this scenario from coming to fruition. There was much debate within the scientific community as to whether or not you should be woken up. And I hope that you feel we made the right choice. Mr. Jones, welcome to the 24th century. This isn't funny, I snapped. But I already knew that he was telling the truth. I could feel it in the tone of his voice, the way the air felt as I breathed it in, the unfamiliar ambient noise trickling into the room. But I couldn't admit it. Not yet. Did Angela put you up to this? What the hell is going on? Said the doctor, tapping away at a device. After a short pause, he told me that it appears your sister was buried in July 2089. I'm so sorry for your loss. Once you've fully recovered, we can take you to where she was buried, if you'd like. My vision was returning, each second bringing a small increase in light. I could now make out the silhouette of the doctor, his sympathetic stance over my bed. Really? This was all I could say. What else could I say to him? I already believed him. It was starting to come back to me in pieces. Angela, the disease, hospital. I can remember her face screwed up like a pillow, crying and asking me if I was sure. I told her I'd be back before she knew it. I'm afraid so. As far as we can tell, you have no living family beyond distant cousins. I can imagine that this must be a lonely experience for you. But believe me when I say that we're all here for you. I tried to swing my legs off of the side of the bed, but could only muster a twitch. Mr. Jones, it may be some time until you're back on your feet again. You'll need a few days to adjust, he said, watching my face as I winced at my immobile legs The man's voice was kind. He really wanted the best for me, I felt. You're going to need some rest. You're suffering from what we can only describe as severe jet lag. Your body clock was expecting it to be 3 centuries ago when you woke up. Is that how jet lag works? We don't know. Nobody has been in amber for nearly as long as you, and it's been decades since anyone has been woken up. We won't know what the effects on your body have been yet, but we'll keep a close eye on it. When he returned the next day, after I'd slept for what felt like weeks, his tone had begun to shift. It was almost imperceptible, but I could feel the change innately. Good morning, Mr. Jones. How are we feeling this morning? Good. I nodded. I'm starving, though. I feel like I haven't eaten in centuries. Do you have anything? Dr. Yadav smiled, pointing toward the tubes that connected my forearm to a machine next to the bed. I inspected it closely, only now aware of my vision having completely returned. All the nutrients that you'll be needing for now, he said. I sat up in the bed, feeling a world better than the day before, but still weak and unable to completely support my body weight. So, Doc, what's the world like out there? What's changed? Don't tell me. Flying cars, right? The doctor exhaled, looking up, shaking his head. Imagine trying to explain the world as you knew it to someone from 1743. Almost impossible, isn't it? Telephones, the internet, airplanes. It would all be so far removed from his reality that it would be impossible to explain in a way that he would really understand. His lack of understanding might even lead him to believe that people from your time live in a hellish place. I paused and reflected. Could it really be that different? I looked around. The one small window on the other side of the room was frosted, the bed like any other I'd seen, and the rest of the room almost entirely featureless. You're wondering if it's really that different, huh? He said. The room has been specifically designed to not overwhelm you. A lot of preparation has gone into waking you. We've been waiting for this for a long time. We just don't know what to expect. So we're taking things slowly. I hope you understand. I'll be fine, Doc, honestly. I'm actually quite excited to go out and see the world, see what's come of it. And by the way, where am I? Chicago. The city of your birth, I'm told. It only seemed right that you were moved to this facility before we woke you. But you're not ready to head outside just yet. There's a lot of things that we'd need to explain to you before you went out there. Otherwise, it might all too overwhelming. I mean, just us telling you about the world is going to be overwhelming. But to see it, to see what's out there, it'll take some adjusting, that's for sure. I'm sure I can handle it, but I'll take your word for it. When will I be better? Back on my feet? Only a day or two. As I said, what's happening to you isn't something that's ever really happened before. So there's still a few unknowns. Good, good. So, what next? A tenseness seemed to creep onto the doctor's shoulders, and with a twitch in his eye, he began to shift his weight from one foot to the other, as if suddenly disassociating and leaving the room entirely. Doc? Oh, yes, he snapped out of his daze. We'll need to run some tests. You're a man from the past. There's a lot we can learn about you. But it'll all be fine. Really, it will be. When he had told me that I had woken into a world 308 years beyond my own, his tone of voice told me that he was telling the truth. His tone of voice was now telling me that he was lying, and I was right. That night, whilst I was half asleep, 3 new doctors came in. Is he awake? One of them whispered to another. They tapped away at their pads, prompting a hiss from the machine beside me, which was the last thing that I heard before waking up in a new room, blinded by lights. I was naked, lying flat on a slab, my wrists and ankles inexplicably bound to its corners. My head turned from side to look, but there were no straps holding me in place. As if by magic, I was restrained. I looked down towards my ankles to find that my abdomen had been opened like a fruit or a pair of double doors. My skin attached on the sides of my body, but resting like blankets beside me. A machine hovered above me, metal instruments dangling towards the undulating yellow and pink of my innards. Immediately, I screamed, and the machine spun towards me before I passed out again. I awoke back in my bed, slowly at first, before shifting into a panicked scramble up the bed. I lifted my shirt quickly, but found nothing. No evidence of surgery. Panting, I began to realize that it was simply a dream. There was no other explanation. An awful dream, so vivid, so frightening, that if I hadn't had woken, I would have never known not to be reality. The doctor came in. Mr. Jones, how are you feeling? You're looking a little sweaty. I'll get the heat turned down. He tapped away at his device. Just a bad dream. I'm fine. I guess I'm just adjusting to being awake after all this time. Yes, when we're treading new biological waters, we're bound to discover new effects on the human body and mind. That's why it's important for you to stay here, under observation for the time being. But listen, that's not why I'm here, he said, walking to the window, picking up a seat under it, and bringing it back to place beside the bed. Sitting down, taking on a somber expression, he explained, "There is a legal responsibility as your doctor to fully inform you of your options, all of them. Since you're not from this time, you won't know that euthanasia is a common practice now. We don't force anyone to choose between life or a brutal, self-inflicted death. You should know that being a patient of ours, this is something we can provide to you for free. It's designed to be quite pleasant. I just want you to know that this option will always be available. Thanks, Doc, I chuckled. Good to know, he nodded, tapped at his device again, catching me completely off guard. I was now falling asleep again. In the first few moments, I wondered if I had miscommunicated. Perhaps this was euthanasia. Was I dying? Was I being sedated? I should have been clearer. I tried to protest, but only managed a small murmur before slipping under. When I awoke, I was back on that terrible slab, held captive again under the piercing lights of the operating table. I looked down to find that, whilst my abdomen was intact, there was something wrong with my leg. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but it didn't look or feel as it should. I looked across to find that cruel machine again. This time it was facing away from me, inspecting something. I squinted, trying to shut out the operating lights and focus. It was holding something. A stick. Something white, slightly yellowish. It spun around and zipped back to hover over me again, obscuring the view of my strange leg. It moved in such an impossible way, as if completely weightless, like a ghost. Just then, a piercing, white, hot pain shot up my leg. My muscles seized up, turning to stone, as pain flooded and swelled into every fiber of tissue. Through the pain, I moved my head to get a better look. Two of its arachnid appendages were sliding my shin bone back into my body through a small opening below my knee. I cried out, wailed even, before fainting. The machine didn't even need to sedate me. Waking once more, back in my bed, I pulled up my linen trouser leg. Nothing. I sigh, adjusting myself back into bed, the image of the machine still bright in my mind. I felt almost embarrassed to have dreamt something so unrealistic, so childish. It was made of a black metal, the deepest black, whilst at the same time being as shiny as a serving spoon. Its body was spherical, with a number of appendages hanging down below it, like the legs of a bug or an arachnid. At the end of each of them, some kind of tool or device, blades, rods, syringes, and when it had turned to me, I had seen that a part of its spherical surface was in fact a tinted glass, a glint of light revealing a large lens behind it. And the strangest thing, it glided around so quickly without making even the slightest sound. It was completely silent. I suppose my imagination couldn't stretch as far as imagining a sound for it. After a short while, an orderly entered the room. "From the doctor," he said, as he handed me one of their devices. It was square, about half the size of a piece of paper, and was transparent, but only from the side with the interface. On the screen was a short paragraph about euthanasia, with 2 options below it: accept, decline. I pressed decline and felt the sensation of pressing a physical button, suspended in 3 dimensions inside the device. The orderly, having waited patiently, took the device and turned to leave. As he was making his exit, he hesitated, pausing in his stride for a minute and beginning to turn before recommitting to his path. "Everything okay?" I asked. He paused again, taking his time to think before he turned. I'm sorry," he said, visibly nervous. He was small, childlike, no older than 20. "I've heard so much about you, and to see you here, I can't believe it. I studied about you." "You're really from the 2040s? I nodded, smiling like a wise old monk. "So, what was it like? The past? Was it like they say?" "Well, what do they say?" "They say it was good. A simple way of living. The birth of technology, the information era. I can't imagine what it was like." "Yeah, it was good. I miss it a lot. If only I knew what this world was like, I would have some point of reference to describe my own time to him. It sure didn't feel simple at the time, but maybe stuff got even more complicated since then." His eye twitched as I said this, an indecipherable emotion sweeping across his face, just like the doctor's had. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I guess." With that, he left the room without another word. I spent the remainder of the day thinking about the outside world. What could possibly be so overwhelming for me? Flying cars? A city in the sky? Or had they lied to keep me here and stop me from leaving early? It annoyed me that they hadn't even given me a clue. "I'll take a peek," I decided. "Tonight. I'll sneak out of the front door for a few moments, take in the sights of whatever is outside. At least then I'll have a taste, without actually being thrust out to navigate a new world on my own." Dr. Yadav said that they'd always look after me. Of course, I waited for hours, picturing all of the possibilities. I thought about the year 1700, compared it with the year 2000, the immense societal and technological shifts over the years. Could it really be the same degree of change? Life in 2000 was better than in 1700, I concluded. So, life now must be better than in my own time. In the dead of night, I left the room, moving carefully down the dim hallway. It was as featureless as my room. I didn't need to walk for long before I spotted a sign above a door. "Emergency exit." Before entering, I instinctively checked the hall. I looked right. I looked left. I froze, swung my head right again. There it was, gliding silently at the end of the hallway, that awful machine, at this distance, a marauding silhouette. I shot down the stairs like a bullet. As I moved, my hands fumbled across my abdomen, looking for a scar. How could they? I lamented. They're keeping me here for their experiments, to examine me, my bones, my flesh. I felt sick. They couldn't lie to me anymore. I'd outsmarted them. I'll leave and never come back, I told myself. Finally, I reached the bottom of the stairs and found a set of double doors. I listened out for the machine, knowing full well that if it were coming, I wouldn't hear it. With a hand on the push bar, I considered for a moment my predicament. No evidence that my nightmares were real. Could my mind, destroyed by disease and time travel, have betrayed me? A flying, silent machine? I supposed that I would find out soon enough. I was outside for 17 minutes. That's all it took before I was back at the door, banging on the cold iron until my fists were bloody. Let me in! God damn you all to hell, you bastards! I want euthanasia. I want it now. I want it now. Let me back in. You made me a oil and water. The scrutiny of the gallery guard weighed on Spencer like a wet dressing gown. He'd felt watched since he pushed through the heavy doors into the guard's peacefully unvisited room. Spencer was tired from his unplanned journey and thought that the gallery of the unfamiliar town might offer sanctuary, a place where he could clear his head sufficiently to be able to plan his next move. He had ignored the guard, who lingered near a door-sized slab of a painting on the right wall of the gallery. He had turned immediately to the left wall and had been standing silently in front of the first painting, hung there for a couple of minutes, trying to think. He just needed to think. The painting was of a young artist sketching a large pig's head. The pig was dead in the profound way reserved for decapitated things, objectified by the disconnection, but somehow more of a head than ever in the absence of a body. The head suggested a hierarchy of death. Even a dead thing could be less dead than a pig with no head, or a head with no pig. Staring, Spencer became aware of the feeble beating of his heart. He needed to clear his head. Death was death, whatever the bristly head said. There were no less dead things. He was alive and still wanted to choose his own future. Still could, if he could only think of what to do. Conscious of the weight of his own tired meat, he shuffled away from the pig. Spencer's eyes scanned ahead of him as he crept along the left wall of the gallery, following the low metal barrier wire that kept visitors and paintings at arm's length. He sensed the guard watching him from his post next to a large, dark canvas on the right wall. He did not stop next to a huge oil of a group of idealized 19th century peasants. The most prominent figure, a rosy-cheeked girl, her delicate bare feet romantically invulnerable to the field's brutal stubble, was staring at him, as was the stern overseer who supervised the girl and her gleaning rabble. The eyes of the overseer and the gallery guard held Spencer in a pincer of disapproval. He kept walking and found relief in front of a benignly curving river, rolling past a grassed bank under skies of early autumn gray. Eyes were still on Spencer, glaring from their place on the right wall, cutting through his back like a barber surgeon. Spencer breathed, filling his pressured lungs, and held his ground in front of the painting of nothing. There were other footsteps in the gallery now, another body to share the guard's gaze and allow Spencer the space to think. The gleaning girl was not her. It didn't even look like her, except for the delicate bare feet, the last thing he'd seen as he left the bathroom. Bath softened and steaming, wet in the air. Her feet could never have survived the rough field. Footsteps moved around him now, softened by gallery etiquette. Spencer ignored them, choosing to see nobody in the hope that he would remain unseen. He focused on the painting. The river would wash the thoughts of her away. He could sweep away into the distance on its soft curve. But the future that the river flowed towards was empty. It mirrored the gray sky and carried the reflection of nothing to nowhere. Spencer couldn't let the water take him there. He moved on, feeling that the stare from the direction of the large, dark portrait was being unfairly reserved for him, despite the presence of another moving around the space with him now. Spencer had driven when he should have been sleeping. He had imagined that he would find peace in the distance that he'd put between himself and the bathroom. But all he had done was stretch his fear over a greater space and carry it with him to a new town. His air-dried shirt stank, and his roomy eyes watched his tired feet trudge over the parquet, avoiding the ceaseless gaze of the guard. The next painting looked much more like her than the gleaning girl had. This young girl was sleeping. The soft pink arm curling around creased, plump pillows was hers. The arm belonged to the feet, steaming and pinkly clean, sticking up out of the water, hanging over the edge of the bath. This was a portrait of the arm that had once encircled him at the house of a mutual friend and made the deal between them. The small hand had settled on his back and told him the lie that she would never leave. After the clumsy, self-taught chess of their early relationship, they had moved into a flat together and settled into a domestic stalemate. Their dreamt future rapidly revealed itself to be unwinnable. His career prematurely lost with the part of him that he sacrificed to the medication. She became his whole unlosable life. If he could continue at all, then it could only be with her. She could never leave him, and he could never leave her. Spencer stared at the sleeping girl in the painting. Her short brown hair was still neat. Her sleep could only have been the briefest of naps. It was not the knotted mop that had once smothered the pillow next to his, the sun-catching nest for her late sleeping head. And neither was it the weightless weed that had billowed and writhed under the bath's hot water. The smooth pink arm hadn't been strong enough to free the hair from the splash and suck of the water. But when the struggle was over, and the only movement was the curl of steam over the ripples cast by a single tear, the peace in her face was the same as that of the painting's sleeping girl. Spencer had given her peace and left none for himself. She could never leave him now. Spencer felt the guard's stare on his back. The footsteps of the other visitor were gone, and he bore the stare alone. The guard was staring with her eyes, bath-poached and unblinking. They steamed into Spencer, seeing his past and keeping him tied to the present of the gallery. The guard knew. The paintings knew. Spencer turned quickly, forced to move by the suspicion of the guard and the watching walls. The guard was not there. There was nobody there. The wet footprints of some rain-chased visitor crossed the polished floor between him and the tall, dark portrait on the opposite wall. He followed the watery tracks towards the painting. He walked, transfixed, until his shins pulled the low barrier wire bowstring tight. And then he leant in further, creasing at the waist. His eyes dragged to the canvas. He looked at his own face, staring back at him. The last time he had looked at himself, he had seen a steam-softened reflection quivering over the rock pool of a slack mouth. Now he saw a perfect mirror image of himself, no less immaculate in its likeness for being scraped in thick oils. The red eyes were one slow blink away from the terror of sleep. Spencer's painted brow was creased in the frown that the image forced him to wear, but the shirt in the canvas still dripped with the splashes of struggle, and the hands, which hung limply at his sides, were pink and steaming. In the background, a bath, a murmuration of flicked brush strokes, showing the same gossamer steam rising from it that wreathed the pink hands. It was a masterpiece. Spencer was mesmerized. Footsteps came and went, clicking and squeaking around Spencer, indifferent to his fixation. His lower back burned as he leant into the painting. He felt glances of concern slip over him and then vanish as visitors moved on and abandoned the petrified man. Spencer needed to move on too. He needed to look away from the pleading red eyes to continue his escape, but he could not. The barrier wire cut into his fleshless shins, and pain climbed up his legs to burn at the base of his craning spine. His mouth dried as his unblinking eyes gummed and seeped. After an unknown length of time, when Spencer saw the steam in the painting begin to curl and climb, creeping out of the frame, the lights went out. The darkness moved in the steam and rolled unseen towards Spencer. He felt its hot caress, and then the vapor settling and condensing in his raw throat. A hand, dripping, warm and small, found the base of his burning spine and pushed with an irresistible strength. Spencer surged forward into the blackness, back to the bathroom he had never escaped. If she could never leave him, then he would never leave her. The next morning, the gallery guard flicked a row of switches, triggering a staccato dawn, which bounced the rarely visited room rapidly in and out of existence before it settled into the new day. As the guard took up his position, he noticed that wet footprints still marked the unmopped floor in front of the large, bleak painting of the man with rolled-up sleeves and the pallor of an unripe strawberry. Behind the man, glinting eyes peeked through a tangle of wet hair over the edge of a steaming bath. Returning Marie. Now, before I say anything else, I just need to establish that I am not mad. I have every reason to be mad, but I'm not. I'm not mad. I've never been less mad than I am right now, even though I have every reason to be madder than I've ever been in my life. To the best of my recollection, you were not working here when I came in on Sunday. I'm sure I would remember somebody with as many piercings as you, especially with you being such a young lady and all. I'm sure I would have made some sort of comment about how you don't have a wedding ring on your finger. And that's probably due to all those cartoons you've chosen to imprint upon yourself. No. When I came in here on Sunday, there was a rather old man working behind the counter. I told him I was looking for a rug because my mother-in-law is coming to town, and whenever she comes over, she expects me to put out all the gifts she's gotten me over the years. 18 years of marriage, and she expects to see everything she's ever bought as though my home is some sort of Daphne Rubite museum. That's her name. Daphne Rubite. She tells me it's Latin, but who knows? The woman lies about everything. Why should her name be any different? Anyway, she got me a rug for Christmas last year, and it was so hideous that I kept it outside in the shed. But when I sent my husband, Griff, to go fetch it so we could display the awful thing, he said, it appeared somebody had broken into the shed and stolen it. Do you believe that? Somebody actually wanted that disgusting rug so much they committed a crime in order to have it. Not that there's much in that shed worth anything, but even the bags of dirt would have been a better choice. My word, I came in here on Sunday because I was looking for a rug that appeared similar to the ugly rug that was stolen. But despite this, allegedly being an antique store, you do not sell rugs here. I believe I filed a formal complaint in that little suggestion box you have at the front, but I haven't heard any response yet. We can circle back to that later. When I expressed my disappointment to the old man working here at the counter, he offered to give me a discount on what he described as a rather interesting mirror. He went into the back of the store and came back with the item. I found it to be a bit too ornate for my taste. It was imitation gold, and the glass had several scratches on it. I told the old man that a discount would not suffice for a damaged object, but that I would accept it as a gift from the store, since I found it so unprofessional of him not to offer unattractive rugs. He took a moment, looked at the mirror, and then agreed to give it to me, gratis. The old man did not put up much of a fight, and I suppose I should have taken that as a sign that something was amiss. When I got the mirror home, I had absolutely no desire to ever look at it again. The only reason I took it was because I never turned down a deal, and there is no better deal than free. I decided to deposit it in my daughter's room. Riva is 15, and as such, she believes she has impeccable taste, when in fact, she has no taste whatsoever. She was quite stunned when I showed her the mirror. It's unusual for me to give her gifts, even on her birthday, when I usually donate money to a charity in her name. She took to the mirror immediately, and Griff did his best to hang it in her room, without putting holes in every wall. Finally, he managed to erect it by her closet, and then we all went about our day in preparation for the arrival of Queen Daphne. Almost immediately, things began to go wrong. I noticed that suddenly all the photographs around the house had been altered. I had no idea how it was happening, but the heads of everyone in the photos were gone. Simply gone. I thought it might be some sort of prank, but neither my husband nor my daughter are all that funny. When I mentioned the occurrence at dinner that night, Riva confessed to me that she believed her mirror was haunted. Not just haunted, mind you, but haunted by the ghost of Marie Antoinette. I would have chalked the whole thing up to a teenager's imagination. But my daughter is the least imaginative person you've ever met in your life. Deciding to investigate myself, I marched straight up to her room and planted myself in front of that mirror. Sure enough, after only a moment or two, there she was, Reina de France, herself. She had her head, but there was a minor scar around her neck, and she was holding the most adorable little dog. My French is spotty, since I haven't spoken it since college, when I spent a semester abroad in Paris, smoking cigarettes and ordering hamburgers at French cafes. I managed to work out that the mirror given to me was once owned by Marie's great-great-granddaughter. and she had taken up residence in it since she found heaven to be rather dull. She was the one who changed all the photos, and she said she planned on committing even more mischief for as long as she was in my house, unless I donated her to a museum where she belonged. Well, if that stuck-up monarch thought I was going to relinquish my own property simply to avoid a little poltergeisting, she was sadly mistaken. I told Marie that she was now a guest in my home and would act accordingly, or I would see to it that her mirror was placed in the shed where some petty thieves might abscond with it, the same way they had with the revolting rug my mother-in-law had purchased for me. I was so invested in intimidating a dead Frenchwoman that I didn't even hear the front door open. Daphne had entered our house without knocking, shocker, and came right upstairs to greet Riva, because her granddaughter is the only person she actually cares to see. She arrived just in time to hear me relay to Marie the story of the stolen rug, and she was none too pleased. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, holding the most vile candelabra I've ever laid my eyes on. "Well," she huffed, "would you care to throw this in the shed as well?" Truth be told, that's exactly what I wanted to do with it. Over the next few days, I couldn't tell you who irritated me more, my mother-in-law or the ghost of Marie Antoinette. While Daphne did her standard passive-aggressive commentary on everything from my fashion choices. "A woman your age wearing skirts? How brave." To how I raise my child. Would one birthday gift a year really be that bad? Marie preferred to be a bit more whimsical in her torment. The house was constantly filled with smoke for no reason at all. It wasn't until I located the source of the smoke that I realized our oven was on high and there was a cake burning inside of it. It might be true that she never actually uttered the phrase about letting servants have their pastry, but that's no reason to waste perfectly good food. I have no idea how she even put the cakes together in the first place, since we normally order takeout and keep absolutely nothing in our pantries. Another tidbit Daphne likes to use against me when she visits. "No sugar," she'll squawk. What kind of a household has no sugar? A skinny household. That's what I feel like saying, but I never do. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought the two of them were conspiring against me in my own home. Daphne blamed Marie when all my skincare products were suddenly smeared all over the bathroom walls. But I can't believe anyone that rich would willfully waste La Mer. Marie was definitely responsible for what was going on with Riva. However, my daughter suddenly began acting out. She was shouting about bourgeoisie and escargot and something about a pot de chambre. It took me a day or so, but then I understood that Marie was trying to possess the girl in order to have an even more effective way of terrorizing everyone in the household. Griff was no help at all during all of this, by the way. He loves the History Channel. So, for him, this was all wildly entertaining. It wasn't until Riva began taking 5 baths a day and demanding that I feed her bonbons that I decided enough was enough. My plan was to take the mirror out to the shed and smash it into 1,000 pieces. But I remember seeing an old horror film where destroying the haunted item caused the specter to permanently embed itself in the home. The last thing I needed was my daughter walking around like royalty until leaving for whatever community college we'd be sending her off to. I waited until earlier today, when Daphne and Riva were sitting on the couch with a cheese plate watching Les Miserables. And then I tore up to Riva's room and grabbed the mirror. I had to be careful coming down the stairs with it. But luckily for me, they were engrossed in the scene where the revolutionaries were being slaughtered. "Brilliant," I heard Marie exclaim in French. "I just love a good comedy." Somehow, all by myself, I managed to get this ghastly mirror into my car and drive it all the way back here. Now, I would like to return it. I would like an apology. I would like 3 free items from this store, all of which I will be choosing. I would also like an assurance that the old man who gave me the mirror is fired. What do you mean you don't have any old man working here? He was very distinct looking. He had bifocals, salt and pepper hair, and his left ear was a bit lower than his right. Surely you must know him, the owner, all right? Fine. So he's the owner. I still want him fired. What's that? When? 10 years ago? And how? A car accident? My. Well, that's what I get for not asking for a receipt.